to introduce Andrew Paul. He's a software trainer at Instill with a passion for education over training. And today he will be talking through how he's been helping young professionals to master communication skills and establish their authentic voices.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrew. I am a software engineering trainer for Instill, and that basically means I spend too much of my time talking to other people and trying to communicate concepts across as we're trying to do bits and pieces. But one thing that we found a lot recently when we've been going to other businesses, other clients, other customers, and talking to them about their needs and what's going on there, is that we have this piece of information consistently, repetitively coming back. And that is a concern that the industry isn't communicating properly. And I don't know if that resonates with you on some level already, but we're going to look at a couple of things today as to where I think the problem lies, and having talked with a few people why that's the case, and how we can work to improve that. And hopefully, in trying to work to do that, we're not going to massively increase our workload at the same time. We're going to try and take things that we're already doing and just make them better. And starting with this then is a false assumption. In the industry, there's that old saying across the board, we know you can talk the talk, but sure can you walk the walk. And there's a terrible assumption there. I think in IT and computing software, it should be the other way round. It should say, we know you can walk the walk. We know you can code. We know that you can build architectural systems. We know you can do all those things. But actually, can you communicate them back again? The assumption is wrong, and we need to change it and try and work differently. And the biggest problem at the moment that we found chatting to other developers, other managers across different companies, is that actually we have people getting promotions, maybe from junior engineer to senior engineer, maybe up to a scrum coach, maybe it's a senior going into an even more senior role. And what they're finding is that, they get the promotion. It might be a case of, you've been here 3 years, you're entitled to something now. And they go out the door on Friday afternoon looking like this, and they come back on Monday morning looking like this, and the only thing that's changed is their job title. And they go on then for, according to statistics, between 6 months and 2 years, like ducks, calmly looking like they're floating across the water nicely, keeping everything together, and actually underneath, it's the panic. What am I doing next? How do I talk to this person? How do I sign these things? How do I deal with my team that I used to be on the same level as them and now I'm meant to be looking after them? How does my communication change there? How do I use different words? What's going on? And we don't think it should be like that. We think that it should be a case of, on Friday afternoon, you're in the position that you're ready to pick up and go on Monday. And the biggest holdback around this is communication. I want to give credit to Rick Monroe here for taking a fairly traditional graph and labeling it better. So this is the Dunning-Kruger curve. And what it maps out is our typical growth, both across our careers as a whole and also as we go maybe from project to project or even from day to day. We typically go through a very similar problem, where what we do is we start back here with very little knowledge, very little experience, and our wisdom's way down, and then we do something right. Confidence soars. We don't have that much more experience though. But the confidence is soaring, and then someone turns around and says, actually, you could have done this slightly differently. Or you read a PR review and you go, I've done that terribly, no. Or you just see somebody who you think is better. And all of a sudden, confidence drops. Now, with that little bit of a confidence drop comes a little bit of wisdom. That's the good news. But by comparison, typically, and this is not scientific, by the way, but typically it takes more time then for us to get back to the same level of confidence. But with that comes a higher amount of wisdom, experience, and knowledge. My question is, have you been through that curve? Everybody has. Some of them go through that curve every day, some of them over weeks, months, projects, careers, jobs. But how can we flatten this? How can we make it different? And I think that this top part of the peak can be brought down a little bit by teaching and learning communication in a better way. Because this proves that we can walk the walk, but it goes wrong when we try to talk the talk. And that peak, that bit where we come down to the bottom, is where imposter syndrome creeps in. It's where we turn around and no matter what we do, we feel like we don't belong. I'm a trainer. I go out every day talking to lots of different people, training them in new things. You know what my panic is every single morning? What if there's someone in the room that knows more than me? There's nearly always someone in the room that knows more than me. It's in my head. It's niggling. And actually, being able to talk about that is a big deal. Being able to share that is a whole other deal. And having people come back to me and talking about that, well, that's the dream. That's where we need to go. Imposter syndrome creeps in because we think we're not good enough. And it gets a grip on you when you keep it to yourself. Let it go. But how are we going to do that? Well, let's look at leadership. Because actually, we look at people in a room, we look at people on stages, we look at people in magazines and blogs, go, wow, they're amazing, I could never be like that. It's almost like they're a born leader. Well, I'm going to say something that's possibly controversial. I don't believe in born leaders. I believe in people who have had experience, learned from it, and then have communicated stuff as a result. I don't think there's any such thing as a born leader. I think all of us have the ability. We just need to be given the opportunity. How should leadership grow? I typed some random numbers into a spreadsheet here. This, again, is not scientific. But this is the picture I would like to see. Rather than having a promotion, the pink line, where we don't really do any leadership, and then one day, whoa, we're going to senior engineer, boom, I need to get experience fast. And then I just coast along, not doing too much until I've got my next promotion, and boom, I'm forced into that situation. No. That's wrong. That's a whole lot of pressure. That's just asking for imposter syndrome to kick in. And it's not encouraging us to grow and communicate, the way that it should. What we want to do instead is to take the things that we are already doing every single day, and we'll look at them shortly, and figure out, how can I improve the way that I talk? How can I improve the way that I communicate? How can I then, as a result, lead people with what I'm talking about and what I'm showing them and what I'm communicating, and all of a sudden the yellow line happens instead. We start to see leadership grow and grow and grow, and by the time you get to that promotion, you are long past the level that you need to be at. And if everyone's aiming to do that, the whole industry is going to be able to communicate. We're going to break the stereotype. I want you to think about Stack Overflow. This is a perfect example of where our communication goes wrong. Here's a page. Doesn't matter what the context is. Doesn't matter what the content is about. Anybody never used Stack Overflow before? Correct. Nobody. Everybody's used it. Look up at the top. Viewed 1.9 million times. Assuming it's accurate. Possibly more. Who knows? How many people have turned around and said, yes, this is a problem that I'm experiencing too? 27,000 out of 1.9 million-ish. You know what that says to me? That says there's people, and I'm one of them, jump on Stack Overflow, scroll through and go, yep, that's the problem. Oh, quick, find a solution. Got it now, move on. And we don't communicate our journey. We don't celebrate that we've gone from not knowing something to knowing something, and we're certainly not communicating the bit where we didn't know it, just in case people would think worse of us. And then we look at the results. Where do we see the answers? This page goes on forever. It turns around and out of 27,000 against 1.9 million, the top rated answer has 35,000 people saying, yeah, that's the right one, great. What about the other 1.8 odd million? Did they just not like it? Did they just move on too quick? Did they just not want to admit what was going on? And someone here has taken the time and really explained what's going on. I love that. That's my job. I'd like more people to do that so I nearly didn't have a job anymore. 4,500 people then yeah, this is good. But someone here has turned around and said, well, actually, I know what this person's saying, but I prefer my context, or I prefer my way of thinking, or I've come across it from a different way. Because you know what? All of us come from different backgrounds. Therefore, we have to have more than one solution, and we have to say which one we think's best. Or if we don't like one, we have to communicate one that's better. And possibly my favorite bit of this entire thing, and I'm going to have to scroll forever here, because there's loads and loads of examples. I promise you, I did the numbers. Nothing goes near 1.9 million. Look at this one at the bottom. 33 people have taken the time to scroll to the very end of that. And to turn round, and I like the first statement, an answer for quick and simple understanding. Brackets. Read the others for more details. Someone's turned around and said, this isn't what I need, this is what I need. And I'm going to turn around and say, I know there's better stuff out there if you want more, but this is what I need. And the irony is you have to read that far before you get to it. But I think that really captures the problem that we have in industry. We have a huge majority, comparative to 1.9 million, that are doing stuff every day, having a look, messing around, trying to get stuff done. We have a tiny minority that are turning around and saying, oh yeah, I had a problem and this is how I make it better. And my biggest problem is the one right down at the bottom of the page. The tiny, tiny little minority that's turning around and saying, well, actually, I know I'm not as big or as powerful or as well explained as these other ones, but this is my opinion. And my favorite part is 33 people agreed with it. Or at least 33 people took the time to agree with it. There's probably more in the 1.9 that's missing. So take that as an example of where we need to communicate better. I'm not saying, well, I am, but I'm not pushing you to turn around and say, well, actually, go on to Stack Overflow and like absolutely everything that you've ever used and comment on everything. Although it would transform the industry, wouldn't it, if we got better answers and we fed in every time we got something right on Stack Overflow or every time something went wrong. But actually, how do we then take things and make things better going forwards? We need to get over that I could never do that mentality that we tend to go through. So for example, I turned around, I was looking at Scrum one day, because I was sad, but I'm a big rugby fan. Come on, Ireland today. But there's Scrums in rugby, and there's Scrum in IT, and are the two meant to overlap? Yeah! Right, wonderful. I used to be a prop. That was the short, big, bulky one, by the way. I look good now, don't I? Thank you, you're not meant to laugh, but that's fine. Well, I've got this knowledge about Scrum that I wanted to share. Is it going to be interesting to everybody? No! Do I enjoy it? Yeah. Do I know stuff about it? Yeah. Am I going to get a huge audience? No. But what was fun was just writing something, sharing it, and finding 16 other people coming back going, yeah, we love rugby too, yes, do Scrum. And now you've got relationships, now you've got communication, and most of all, you've taken the time to share. You're putting your voice out there. You're saying things the way you understand them. You're sharing your background, which is different from anybody else's. And if you feel like you're alone, and you're the only person that's ever experienced this, I guarantee there's somebody else somewhere that's thinking the exact same thing. You can be the person that communicates it. They find you, and next thing you know, you've got a community. Someone said, wow, thank you. I could never do that, standing up at the front and talking, presenting. Scares the life out of some people. I've put this one up in particular. This is Matthew Wilson from Instill. I love it when Matthew presents. Because when Matthew starts to present, he doesn't just go straight into the technology. He settles his nerves by putting up a picture of him with his wife and his kids, and he introduces himself as, "Hi, I'm Matthew. I'm a husband, I'm a dad, and I'm a software engineer." And then he gets stuck in. Something about that settles him down, and I think something about that gets the audience involved with him too. That doesn't suit everybody. But when you're presenting and doing things, you have to be yourself. You can't be someone else. You have to know your stuff. We'll talk about not presenting as a first option later. But sometimes you've just got to do it, and sometimes you've got to do it 5, 6, 60 times just to find out where you belong. What way do you work? What is your way of doing it? And just get over the fact that you think you could never do that. This is a work experience group, and I love this picture. Why do I love it? Because we've got this person at the front who's turning around and sorting stuff out. And we've got the person behind them in the sort of beigey hoodie thinking carefully. And then we've got this guy over here who's looking on, and you can see that he's processing, going, something's going to go wrong here. But do you know what I love about this? Not one of those guys know how to architect. The point is, when we put somebody in a room and we encourage them to do their thing, they're going to be able to do it. We're working as a team. We're never a group of individuals. And talking to each other every day and understanding how each other works is good. But what I would say is that if this person in the beige hoodie, for example, was always in the team, standing at the back going, I'm probably going to grab them at some point and kick them to the front and say, right, take you the lead. But there's a balance. If they're naturally quiet and thinkers, we're going to encourage that because that's going to bring some good stuff. Do not feel like you have to be the one at the front all the time. But also don't let yourself get isolated as a one-skill-only person. And what about supporting people? Again, this is Jason from Instill. And Jason doesn't know I'm saying this today. I hope he's not watching. I love Jason. I work mostly remote, but the rare day I go into the office and Jason is there, Jason will always come over and he will say something. Sometimes sarcastic, nearly always out of love, and 100% always with a smile on his face. And that just makes the rest of my day go fine. And the thing that I love about Jason too is that he's a fanatic about food. And that means he feeds the family and Instill. That's his thing. I'm not saying he does that for his job. He doesn't do anything else. He does a huge amount of other stuff. But on top of that, he just loves to be there and support and look after and feed. But how do we support? It's scary for people who've done it where you're told, you're being given a mentee and you have to do one-to-one reviews with them. What do I talk about? I've never been in this position before. I can't do that. You can as a human being on the other side. You talk to them if it was just coffee and you're right, so let's just talk to them and figure out where our boundary is and how we're going to move forwards. We need to learn as much from what isn't communicated as from what is. So if we see gaps, I didn't hear about that. What's that about? That's not being communicated. And we can't just go, I'll be all right for the next time. We have to figure out how we're going to address those. It's a bit like security. If we're trying to build a strong, secure community within our business, what do we have to do? We have to have the ability to speak up without getting shot down. I think I clicked a link. That was phishing. Whoops, my bad. Imagine if they kept quiet. It's a problem. It's about what isn't communicated that we need to address. To find our voice in doing that, then, we have to be sure that we are being ourselves. You can't be anybody else. And you have to be your authentic self. Do not pretend to be someone else. You have to be you. You need to be self-aware. You need to be reflecting on everything that we do. So I'm going to leave here today and I'm going to sicken myself by watching the YouTube feed at some point. And I'm going to turn around and say, oh, you bounce too much, your hands are flicking, let's control that a little bit more. I'm going to look at what my strengths and my weaknesses and my opportunities and my threats are. Oh, do you remember that? Evaluations at university and courseworks and all that kind of stuff. You know what I hate about that? Side rant. Evaluations are like the last 20% that nobody ever does. So you get enough to pass, it's fine. What would happen if all the marks in our courseworks were about the evaluation first, no matter what rubbish you produced? Tell me why it's good and why it's bad, and I will give you the marks. We don't carry that reflection properly through. And then we need to turn round, and from reflection will come transformation if we start to do it right. But at the moment, we're not doing it right. And don't forget to share everything that goes good as well as everything that goes bad. Because nobody programs it right the first time. It errors out 30 million times first. Let's celebrate the journey. So what do we mean by being authentic? You know yourself best, therefore be yourself. Don't try to be anyone else. You need to be brave enough to share. Remember I said that one person you feel like you're by yourself, it's going to be someone else. And if you start to share, people will come and go, wow, I never thought of it that way. Wow, I've been thinking that too. You need to start to share. Build your community up. And you can't know everything, so don't try to pretend. Someone asked me a question on the course. If I don't know, I'll say I don't know. You know why? Because I'll get caught out if I try and bluff. It goes wrong. There's leadership all around that we can think about that can make things better. It's a side note for today. So we could look at potentially titleless leadership. We could look at managing up as leadership, mission control, peerless or peer-led leadership. All those things. I'm going to share a link at the end, or there'll be a newsletter if you want to sign up for a wee bit more to discuss it. We can look at those. But the key thing is, no matter what leadership styles that we actively try and bring in, not management, but leadership, there's some overlaps that are going to be useful and we're going to keep bringing in. So regardless of what we're doing, we need to have this effective communication. And we need to decide how we're doing it and why. There's too many meetings. Scrap meetings, let's do something different. Setting an example. This is what I expect. This is my standard. Well, how do we share that? How do we get that across? It comes from effective communication, doesn't it? And we need to create consistency. We need to say that we're sticking with this because we want to see improvement. We're going to ride the waves out now. Okay, there is going to be a stage where sometimes you do have to change. That's why there's a reasonably in brackets there. But we want to come up with a plan and persevere with it and respond according to what we're trying to do. And in all our communications, we need empathy. And I'm going to have a rant in a minute, but AI is not going to bring empathy. It's going to do the opposite. We're going to lose that unless we're very careful in how we use it. We need to understand and how the humans are feeling and what they need. We're going to look at clarity. Exactly what is needed for another human. I think prompting might actually teach us to explain things better, but the results aren't going to work. And listening skills. Other humans matter, and don't tell anyone. Sometimes they're right. We have to listen, we have to take on board, and we have to move. And what I want to look at then is how we can bring this into our everyday working. Okay, so where could we start? Well, as a start, I'm going to bring a huge caution. AI, I think, is going to cause problems to this. I'm not against AI, I'm against using it at the wrong time. And I have seen and talked to junior engineers, cover your ears if this is you, who are putting emails into ChatGPT and saying, please make this more professional. Please add a joke. Now, GDPR, you shouldn't be putting client information in there in the first place. But is that not scary? That we're not learning how to communicate at the different levels to the different people in the right way. We're not appreciating that a joke in Dublin might offend somebody in Ontario. We need to get to know our people and be human in terms of what we're doing. So I would say AI will help us if we use it right, but at the moment it's being used dangerously in terms of what we're trying to communicate and learning to talk properly. Everyday tasks is how we're going to change this communication culture. And I'm going to point to a few things that will hopefully help you go away today and think, how can I improve communication for myself, to my team, whoever it is that I'm working with? And the first one is the bane of my life, presentations. Someone gets up, they've made a beautiful PowerPoint, they've got all the notes, and actually they're turning around and saying, I'm watching the screen, I'm reading the thing, and I'll look up occasionally, I'm not really talking to what's going on, all the stuff's down here, and I don't really know what's going on anymore. You bored yet? We want to get people talking. We want to get them excited and knowledgeable. So they need to be able to, first of all, have a chat with me for 10 minutes and a coffee where they tell me all the things that are going well and going wrong and the technology that's working and what they're using and why they chose that. And if they can talk to me for 10 minutes about that, then they can pick out the key points, put them on some slides, and then talk to a group about the same stuff for 7 minutes because there's not a response. If we have presentations going on, let's take to the side and say, actually, we could do this slightly differently. Here's how we could talk. Let's talk people through stuff before throwing them onto a presentation. Stand-ups. Are stand-ups brief? Are they to the point? And my big question is, what is to the point? Are you getting the key pieces of information across? And are you evaluating that, particularly as managers? Actually, you said something today, and that didn't really paint the story that I needed. Actually, we started to go off tangent. Let's fix that for later. And we find when we go in and we consult and we're going through and trying to help people with particularly agile methodologies, that the stand-up is one of the big slow-ups of the day. And then that filters through everything else. Too much chat, wrong focus, too many meetings, not getting work done. How can we be more efficient, especially if they do it for 5 years and then they're just carrying it through? Emails, DMs, what's the difference? Do you have a difference? Do you have a policy? Do you have examples? Do you have explanations as to what's good and what's bad? Do you pick people up and say, I don't think that was quite professional enough? And then are we encouraging how and why those things are professional? Let's push, let's make that part of our mentoring. And don't be afraid to say, I don't think that's right. Let's share those things. This is a task that we see all the time. It turns around and it shows how different people think about projects in the same way. We've got the mad salespeople who just sell stuff. Wow, it's going to be amazing. All they actually want is this. And then the engineer produces something mad. But the reality is the documentation is always non-existent. And whilst when we're teaching Agile, we do prioritize implementation, doesn't mean we abandon documentation. But how can we make our documentation better and start to work our way through rather than abandon it? And we're seeing tools that are coming through and developing that. And one thing that's big for me and one thing that I'm trying to build programs for at the moment is looking at CPD. You go from junior to senior, well actually, what does that mean? What are all these abbreviations? What's all this finance and business talk that I need to understand but I was never taught as a software engineer? How can I then pass that knowledge down? How do I filter it and change and adjust it for the different people of what's going on? Well, we need to have CPD that points that way and starts to make it work. Do you have that? Do you have CPD for communicating and how to be better? Why not? We need to become apprentices. We're going to our customers and respecting the fact they know more than us. There's that sort of laugh of, oh, well, they chose that piece of technology. What would they know? They're idiots. But don't tell them that. But the attitude filters through. We need to develop respect and empathy and understand so that we can communicate with those people. And do you bring your juniors along whenever you're talking to the client so they can see how they interact and start to build better themselves? And code. We're against comments for the most part. We want smoother, better code, don't we, with good explanations. But what about reviews? Do people look at reviews and go, oh, I'm insulted, I don't know how to do better? Or do they turn around and they say, oh yeah, I get that? Or better still, do you just do pair programming and turn around and say, well, now it's time for me to explain what's going on and we'll bounce through it together. And now it feels, the tone of voice, that it's not a negative thing, it's a good thing that we're trying to do through. And in everyday tasks, do you just find the good and celebrate it? At Instill, we have a lovely channel in Slack where we celebrate and push things. Some things seem small, some things seem huge. We celebrate them no matter what. You know why? Because that's encouraging, it's sharing, and it's being positive in terms of what we do. Remember, whether it's you or your team, you have a great voice. It is your voice. And the world needs to hear it. Whether it's in your company or whether it's beyond, you need to bring that forward. I'm hoping some of those have hinted at things that might help come along and bring your communication in your teams, how you can review the things you're doing every day and push them a little bit further. I'm hoping you might just go on Stack Overflow and start commenting on things a bit more. But also, if you want to find out a little bit more, there's a QR code there. There's a newsletter coming out on Thursday, and I'll have a couple of links in it specifically talking about leadership and thinking about communication. There's a host of other things to do with NIDC this week as well, but feel free to sign up for that and hopefully see it on Thursday. I'll be around for a few minutes afterwards. I don't think there's maybe time for questions, but thank you so much for having me, and I'll see you about again soon.